Alright, so now this is going to be the shader material tutorial. I'm basically going to show you how to create this effect with the model. Just this like sort of Toon PBR mix shader with a specular highlight that dances over the surface, and this creates this really soft look that I really like. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so you're just going to start in your basic Blender scene, and you're going to switch over to this viewport shading mode, and you can choose scene world if you have an HDRI you like. I'm just going to stay simple here and just use this matte cap here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn world strength up to 2. And from here, I'm just going to go straight into adding some lights. And the lights that I'm using here, I'm using 2 area lights. Make those visible. I'm using these 2 area lights to create these hard rims here. I just added them in, and I blasted the strength and made them really small, just so we could get a really sharp, graphic-looking highlight on both sides. These are totally not necessary, but I like to work with them. And then I'm just going to add a sun lamp to be my main light source here. You can set it to whatever direction you want, and you can set the strength fairly low and the angle to whatever looks best. The lower the angle, it will affect the shadow and make it a little bit sharper, but set it to whatever looks good for you, or just copy whatever settings I've got here. I'll just do something like that, and we'll go straight in. So for the skin, I'm just going to go ahead and add a new material. Let's name it skin. And I'll go ahead and show you some of the basic logic I use. This logic will be used for all parts of the shader, for all parts of the model, the clothing, the hair. They all kind of use the same method, just the specular kind of varies from object to object. But let's jump right in. So I'm going to start off by grabbing this diffuse BSDF, and I'm going to try this shader is essentially going to generate some nice colors for us that we're going to turn into data that plug into this principled BSDF shader. So we're going to be combining the effect of these, and the best way to do that is to turn this into color data that this shader can read. That way we can access these other nodes while still having the benefits of this shader, which is really good for Toon shading. I'm going to use a shader to RGB. And this is going to take the data that comes out of this diffuse shader and turn it into RGB data, color data that we can use to plug into here. You can see these 2 yellow nodes are the same, which means that they will hook up. And from here, I'm going to plug in a color ramp and just plug that in, and you'll see what happens. So what we're going to end up with right here is it's going to take the lighting data that we have from this lamp, and it's going to crush it to be this like tight, toony looking black and white data that we can make as tight as possible like this, or we can make it soft. And if you just want really simple Toon shading, you can make this color whatever you want. And that looks all right. You know, you can do this with multiple materials, and that can be one way of working. But I want to use my own texture, so I'm going to go ahead and add an image texture here and put in my texture. And you're not going to see it right now because this color ramp is sort of taking over the effect at this moment. If we were to plug it in here, you would see it, but you would lose your sharp shadow. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this color ramp data logic, and we're going to multiply it on top of the image texture. And that way we can still have the effect, but it's all color data that this shader can read. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to just go ahead and copy these 2 nodes, Shift D, disconnect this. I'm going to change this to black and white data because I just wanted to use it as like a mask to multiply on top, just like you might in Photoshop. I'm going to plug the color into back here. And then from here, I'm just going to add a mix color. I'm going to plug this data into the top because I would like this to be the main effect being seen, and this one plugged into B will be on top of this effect, just like a layer. I'm going to set this to multiply just like in Photoshop, and then I'm going to plug that into base color. And right away you can see that effect. It's basically taken this data that we had before, and it's multiplied the effect on top of the shader we had before. And so now we get this relatively Toon shaded looking effect that responds to light, just like so. So from there, you can also just change this color to anything you want. You can make it more red if you want. You can play with different blending modes. You can add a light color in, just like that. And you can add more handles if you want to create like a bounce light effect, what have you. Yeah, that's the very basics of this logic. I use this logic for the clothing, because I don't really need specularity there. It's a rough surface, but if you want to enhance this model even further, there's a couple more things you can do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add that shine that bounces over the top. And to do that, we're going to need to use a Fresnel. And this is the easiest way I've found to do this. There's many different ways. This will be the easiest. It'll basically create that shine right where the camera is looking, and you can adjust it using a color ramp. So we're going to basically just make a Fresnel. I'm going to add a color ramp so that I can drive that data with a little bit more control. And then I'm going to add a mix color node again. And I want to take all of this data from before that we've established and plug that into the top because I want that to be the prominent one seen. So then I'm going to plug this data into this node, which basically says, use this as a mask and display this color where this is masking. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that into base color just so you can see. I'm going to turn this to add so that it adds this data on top with math. Anywhere it's white, it'll add a +1, making the masked areas lighter. I'm just going to change this to white. I'm going to clamp this data, like so. I'm just going to invert it so I can see that this is going to be on this side here. I'm just going to mess with this number to see what I like. Something like that looks pretty nice. You can see when you move the camera around, the shine will move with it. Adjusting these nodes. If I drop the brightness of this, it'll essentially affect that control, or you can adjust it from here, make that a little bit more yellowish. And if you're getting specular in areas that are kind of weird and you want just a little bit more control over that, what you can basically do is multiply a mask on top of this data to say, hey, show up only in areas that I've painted for you to show up. So basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add another image texture so you can create your own mask here. You can call this spec mask, whatever you like. Make it small, doesn't need to be big. My image editor here. I'm going to pull up my new texture here. I'm going to go into texture paint. All right, and so then we just take that mask and we plug that into factor, and then we plug our multiply into this factor. And right now it's having no effect because it's just black, and black is saying, all right, it's all good, but where we're going to paint white, it's going to get rid of that shine. So I just paint bucketed and filled this area with white, so you can go in and you can start painting in with black the areas where you'd like the shine to show up. So I'd like it there, maybe a little bit there, a little bit here. You can even get kind of fancy with it and add like a little bit of a sparkle dot texture, maybe a little bit there, and just like that. Okay, so back into object mode. There's one more thing we can do here to make this look really nice, and that's going to be add a Fresnel that kind of imitates an outline. And I will show you guys how to do that in my next video, which is all about creating that anime style outline using both a Fresnel and the inverted hole method. It's going to look really great. It's going to be easy. No worries at all. I'll see you in the next one, and I hope you enjoy.
Oh! Wow!